I have, and with my family together, we've really enjoyed this day, and last evening we've looked forward to it, and also enjoyed singing with the boys together. I'm glad I got the opportunity. I did it. My family gave me permission, and I really enjoyed that. I'm afraid that's maybe one of the main reasons I did it, but also it's a good thing to do, and one thing that is hard to pass up. So hope you were blessed. We enjoyed it, and ministering in that way, and some very beautiful words in the songs that we sang. One phrase that stood out to me always when we sang it was that we would smile at the foe, right? We would smile at the enemy. So I don't know what enemies you have in your life, but is the situation so that you can smile at that enemy? The battles that you are facing, it's not easy. But the song said, hey, we can smile. A Christian, a believer can smile at the enemy. And so that's a good challenge for us, and that takes faith and that things will work out. And so we heard testimonies about that as well earlier today. So again, welcome to each one that is here. Also those that are joining us on the radio, and those of you that are joining us online. We'd love to have you here, but I think we're all glad that you're joining us online, and we hope you and we trust you have an enjoyable evening as well, and have had an enjoyable day at home where you are and where you're watching us from. So the topic that we have this evening, you've seen it in the schedule, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't choose it. It was given to me. I think Pastor Ronald was picking on me a little bit, I'm afraid. I don't know. But yeah, it's a good topic, I guess, to talk about home life with social network and technology. And I didn't know what to talk about that. How can we make a message out of that will encourage us? And that is my prayer when I preach, that we will be encouraged, that you will be encouraged, and I want to be encouraged. And so how can we be encouraged about that? Home life with social network and technology. But I think we'll be encouraged. And God's Word, as usual, has some things to say to us about this topic as well. Surprisingly, well, not. The Bible talks, I think, about almost anything if we look for it. And I'm also glad for the brothers who have shared with me, have had discussions, and I've asked some of you, hey, what should I say? What needs to be said on this topic? And several of you gave me some input, and I've put some of those things into the message as well. So I appreciate that, and it's a message that I need as well. My family is here, and they know that I need this message as well. And so it is for me, it's for all of us. God's Word teaches us. So we want to have several scriptures that we want to look at. One that we want to start off with is in Psalms 19, verse 14. If you have your Bible, you might want to open it to Psalms 19, verse 14. And you might want to look at the verse once in a while as we speak and think about it, somewhat as a backdrop, I guess, to our thoughts. Psalm 19, verse 14. See if I can find it. It's a verse that I've been thinking a lot about lately, or it's been in my mind already since before I prepared for this message, and maybe I've mentioned it Sunday mornings already as well sometimes, but Psalms 19, verse 14 says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." And so that, I think, is the prayer of every believer, that verse. That the words that come out of my mouth, so in other words, the communication, we could say, the things that I express. He says the words of my mouth, so I don't want to add to Scripture, but the words that I speak will be acceptable to God. And that the thoughts that I think will be acceptable to God. Acceptable means that he will welcome them. He is okay with them. Plot iets ongenom. Dat de vieren wat ik zeide en de gedanken wat ik aan mijn hart heb. De psalmist beet hier, hij zegt dat God, hij wenscht zich dat God die wordt onnemen, dat God die wordt kan onnemen, dat die worden acceptable zijn bij God. And so I think that prayer, that verse is a good foundation or a good backdrop, maybe the main part of a message when we think about technology. Now, I don't know exactly what was in the minds when this topic was suggested, so I've just put some thoughts together about social networking and technology. Now, let's just one thing that those who play baseball, we played some baseball or softball before. That's fun. We enjoy that. One thing that I had to learn when I was a boy about catching balls, I'm not sure when I learned it. Maybe I learned it after I was a boy. But I had to learn, at some point I had to learn about catching a ball. So if one of these guys throws a ball at you, it usually comes pretty fast, right? Probably all of us, or almost all of us, remember a certain amount of fear when that ball came, right? If anybody can identify with that? They throw the ball so fast and, oh, what are you going to do with it now, right? Have you ever ducked when the ball came? You say, oh man, you jumped out of the way or you ducked? I think I have sometimes. And the other thing is that if you're not sure how to catch, then you make an effort to catch, right? And sometimes you try to catch like this. Did your dad ever teach you that you don't hold the glove like this to catch a ball? What happens if you hold your glove like this to try to catch a ball that the boys threw? Anybody know? It sometimes, more often than not, goes like this, shoop, right against your face, right? Has that ever happened to you? Yeah, it has happened to me, I think, sometimes, and I've seen it happen to other people. So you can do things, and I'm not that good of a ball player, but eventually I learned that if somebody throws a ball really fast at you, the best thing to do is to catch it. To do that, you have to look at the ball, and you have to be ready with your glove and not hide from the ball, not run away from it, and you have to just go right at the ball and catch it, and then you got it, right? Isn't that the best thing to do? And that makes the other people happy usually, unless it was a big fair hit and he had hoped to make a home run, right? But then that is a little bit about baseball. And I think that is a lesson or an example about many things in life. Before we talked about smiling at the enemy. That ball comes at us really fast and we are that way and we're grabbing, we're ready to catch it, we're going for the ball. It's kind of like we're smiling at the enemy, right? And so that is that way in many things. And I think that with this topic and with the things that we are involved with nowadays, I think maybe that is the approach that we need to take as well. Let's look at the words a little bit. So we have in our title, we have the word technology. And so we just need to simplify some of these things so that we're not scared of them. Technology, and I didn't look in the dictionary, I just went off the top of my head, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong later. Please don't do it now. Technology, I think, isn't it, would you agree, it's an invention that makes life easier, it makes life simpler, or why would you else invent something except to make life better? To make an improvement in life, if you've been able to invent something, makes life better, simpler, or more efficient. For example, electricity. Some of you know who invented or discovered electricity, right? Or plastic is something that we all take for granted nowadays and don't want to take it away from us, so that is a technology. Or there are a lot of things that are technology, just really simple things. A pen is a technology that somebody has thought of. They thought it was a really good idea, and we all agree, and we all have lots of them around. There's not many good ones, but we all have pens and we use them a lot. It's technology. So technology is not a bad thing. Technology is a good thing. God gave us as humans the brains and the wisdom to think of things and to invent things, and he said we should have dominion over the world and we should take control of things. And so that is technology. It's inventions that are, I don't know, are there bad inventions? I suppose there might be, but I think for the most part, technology is just science. It's just a natural thing. Networking means what we're doing here today. It's interconnection. You sometimes get invitations to a networking event, right? And so it's a place where people gather to meet other people and hope there will be some good connections. And the business world that is done sometimes, I've heard of that and so on. That word is used sometimes, right? Networking. And we do that here. Maybe we don't call it that, but in other words, it's interconnection, communication together, and trying to find common ground and a way to move forward better. So that's networking. And then media is just a means of delivering something. I don't know if we could call your van or your truck a media, but maybe your garden hose could be called that. It's a way to bring something to another place. Books are a media to deliver information, right? That is what media is. And obviously a phone is media. And so we often these days, and I think that's intended with the title, but media is something to convey information. Usually we think of it that way, to convey something from one place to another, and usually we mean information. And social is a really good word that many of us like, because we really like to socialize, and that means to have things to do with other people, to be together again, like we are here. We're socializing. That's something that many of us have sorely missed over the last months and years. So socializing is having to do with other people. So now our title is Home Life with Social Network and Technology. So what does that mean? So God has made us, God has made you and me that we enjoy socializing, we enjoy friendship, and we enjoy fellowship. I think for the most part that is true. There's the odd person that doesn't seem to enjoy it, but I think they could be brought to enjoy it. I used to be more that way, but I think I always enjoyed friendships. But we like to, that's how God made us. We like to fellowship, we like to socialize, we like to have friendship with God, and we like to have friendship with other people. The New Testament teaches us to socialize and to have fellowship with others, to bear each other's burdens and not to forsake the assembling of the saints. And Jesus says he wants to, if I can use that word, socialize with us. He knocks at every person's heart's door. He says if we open our door of faith to him, he comes in and has communion with us, and he manifests, he reveals himself to us, right? And God in the Garden of Eden fellowshipped, or socializing is too trivial a word really, but he had to do fellowship, communion with Adam and Eve. And so that is something that we're programmed to do. Since the beginning of time, since Adam and Eve and onward, people have lived together. They have socialized and they have depended on each other. They have been individuals, and they have also been family units. God designed the family unit starting with Adam and Eve. A man and a woman, if they find a suitable partner, and very often children. Not always, but very often. And so that is a family unit. So God designed it that way, and he designed it so people can have that unit together for the most part. And that's a way of, I guess, governing the world and having an orderly world. And so each man is responsible for his unit, and each woman is responsible to help him. And the children are supposed to live in that, or they do live in that environment. And then, so we as individuals, there's a family unit, and then there's a church, or the community, or the village, I guess. Many of us grew up in a colony lifestyle, or a more closed community in southern countries, and so we know what that village life is like. That was different than what we experience today. You just lived with the people that were there. Like, you didn't choose your neighbors, did you? Those were just your neighbors. Just like today as well, if you live in a town somewhere, or if you have neighbors, those are just your neighbors. And maybe nowadays it depends on maybe where you live or who your neighbors are. Maybe you have a good relationship with them, maybe you have no relationship with them, but they are just your neighbors. And so that's just how it is. And so we lived in a village kind of a setting, right? And so there was communication. I remember as a boy, different neighbor men, they came to borrow tools from my dad. And we helped each other out in that way sometimes. And so there are a lot of pleasant things, and I'm sure also sometimes unpleasant things, but that was village life. And so that's a social life together, and God has made us to enjoy socializing for the most part, and often it works well. Communication has always been face-to-face or side-by-side with the people in our community, in our surroundings. There were no quick means of travel, and you were just with the people in your community. I remember a couple of years ago when we were at the Bible school in Mexico in the mountains at Huapaca. Some of you have been there, and it was a lot of fun because we were so isolated. It felt like a world away from the rest of the world. There was zero communication. And so eventually I realized this is how people have always lived for the most part. There were no quick roads. There was no telecommunication. We were just totally shut off. And there was that group. And I realized if we'd lived that way for a lifetime, maybe a couple times a year a visitor would come, that would be a totally different life, right? And so it's a face-to-face, side-by-side kind of a life. That is how people have lived almost until now. You were just with the people that were in your community. Obviously, you could move, and as technology started to develop, then people started to travel more. Roads were better, and they invented different ways to travel faster. And so I'm just laying some background. You may wonder why I'm saying all these things. I want to lay this background for us. And so people started over time moving about. Boats were invented, and faster wagons, I guess, and eventually vehicles were invented, and trains, and eventually planes and jets and all kinds of things till now. I remember my grandma told me once that when they moved to Mexico back when they were a younger family, then saying goodbye to the people back here had been very difficult because in a way it felt like they didn't know if they would ever see each other again. And when she was older and retired, she flew back and forth all the time, or many times at least, right, in that plane. That's how technology changed in her lifetime. And so how does that change how we interact? Eventually there were larger cities, not just smaller villages, right? If we go far enough back, and in the cities you had many options. You could now socialize with the people of your choice. It's no longer just a little village. Now you have 100,000 people or 200,000, 500,000 people, and you can choose who you want to be with, right? And so that changes life quite a bit if you think about it. I think we can imagine that. And many different churches to choose from, or many different schools, I guess, and neighborhoods and workplaces and people to socialize with, right? And so that is how life has changed through time. And today, there have been more big advances in technology, and so that's why we're talking about this, because we all carry in our pocket, we carry basically the whole world. Many of you, maybe I should ask for it, but many of you have a phone in your pocket, and a phone is a piece of technology. It's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's a piece of technology, like the chair you're sitting on. I guess we'd say that's a good thing, right? Can be used for good things and can be used for bad things. And so that is another step. And so when we talk about technology, we often refer to our phone, I guess, and the internet. And so, but that technology has made another big change in the way we relate to people and the way we live our lives. With our phone, we can be the master of our own world. You can socialize with anyone. I've heard of people socializing with people that they had never met from the another side of the globe. If you think through your contact list, I'm sure you have people that you hardly ever meet, right? And so that is interesting. You can socialize with a lot of different people. You can also unsocialize people as well. You can kind of just ignore them, right? That happens as well, and we should do some of that. With that, we can create, or people do create our own online presence, right? You can make yourself, you can make an image of yourself, and I don't use Facebook, I don't even know if I use social media. Do I? Some of you would probably know. I use WhatsApp. Is that social media? So you're laughing at me, looking cross-eyed. I don't know if you're laughing because I think it isn't, or because it's obvious that it is. Are you having a duh moment? That's fine. So whatever that is, if that's social media or not, I use WhatsApp, and most of you know that. And so with that, we can create an image of ourselves. We can, just like when we come to church, or we go to town, we do some of that too, right? We quickly go and look a little bit yet, at least if it's not Saturday. If we have time, maybe sometimes you go change your pants quickly yet or whatever. To come to church, and you often, Sunday mornings at least, you dress a little bit different, right? So you put on a different presence than you have Saturday afternoon. Just like that on social media or in the online world, let's leave it at that. People can make a different presence of them, an image of themselves the way they want to appear to all these distant people. Obviously, to the neighbors, to the church people, it's not so easy because they meet you more often, right? You can't put on too much of a fantastic image for them because they know that it wouldn't be true. You're not that fantastic. And obviously your family knows you even better. And so you don't live with these people together, like the distant friends. They do not see your daily life. And so you can, in a way speaking, you can escape reality with them, right? And I don't know what probably none of you do that. I wouldn't think so. I would hope not. But maybe subconsciously we do. We need to be aware of that. We can create our own world and our own society of our choosing. We can choose who or what is allowed into our little world, into our make-believe world that we're making for ourselves. And I think some people do that. We can be very selective in the image that create. Not only you can do that, but others as well. So a person that does not like his actual society in which he's living, he can, or his family or his church, can escape from it at times, maybe for moments, maybe for longer times, and live and communicate in this fake world. Like, it's a real world, but I shouldn't call it a fake world, but in this virtual world, I guess. Not quite virtual either. This alternate world. This is an attractive option if we are discontent, maybe if we are feeling hurt, or if we feel left out, but it's not very real. It's not very, down to earth, because we can just put forward what we want. We pick and choose our information that we watch, right? If we're living just in a little village and we have none of this, we can't pick and choose our information that much. Our neighbors are just there, and they have to live with us, and we have to live with them. But here you can pick and choose what you watch, what you listen to, what you see, where you go, who you're friends with, and all of that. You can, if you wanted to, people can choose their church. That is becoming, I read as I studied for this message, I've found that it is a trend nowadays to have online church. I mean, different than just live streaming like we're doing now, but to actually that a church would just be an online church, right? And so I don't know how much of a trend it is, but somebody said it was a trend, so let's leave it at that. And so those are things. It's maybe almost unbelievable, but that is the world that there is. And so there's all kinds of variety and all kinds of opinions to live in. And I'm calling it this evening an artificial world. And it's a Band-Aid for maybe it could be a Band-Aid for the loneliness or for the problems or the lack of fellowship, of real fellowship with fellow believers or with God, right? And we may not realize it. I think we need to think those thoughts at least once. And so like I said before, many of us have grown up very separated from the world, maybe those of us who are a bit older, from the wider world. And over the last years, I guess, to me it looks like, as I look at what is happening to us, what is happening to me, what is happening to you and to many people, we are now hit with a rapidly changing world. We are hit with a wide array of just a torrent of information that is there because we now have the means to access it. It has always happened, but 200 years ago, somebody living somewhere would never have known about what was happening on the other side of the world. But now, if we want to, we can be exposed to that, and we can worry about it, we can be in esteem about it, we can think about it all day. But those are things. That's what I mean when I say that information is available, plus the world is in a crisis. It has been in crisis before. This is not the first time. But there are a lot of a lot of big things have been happening that have affected us, right? So things have become very personal, very big. They felt somewhat shaky, or, what is going on exactly? So we have those things have happened at the same time. Within the last decade or two, we have gained, and I'm generalizing, but we've gained access to information, and also a lot of big events have been happening. And so that is what we are dealing with. And that is okay. But then how are we dealing with it? If you think about our baseball example, how are we dealing with that? One of my friends said to me some time ago, he said to me, my parents have always been conservative people. They've always been, separated from the world. They've always been, not active in the government or whatever. Now all of a sudden it feels like they're Trump supporters or whatever, right? And I thought, wow, what's going on? And I know, it was just in a discussion. I've heard different things, right? And so I could include myself in that, right? People are passing things on that we would never have even been aware of long ago. But now, once we are confronted with something, then we have to deal with it. Just like when somebody throws a baseball at it, you have to do something. You have to either duck, or you have to somehow try to catch it, or you have to catch it. Either of those things you have to do. And so that is the same thing with the information that we have access to. We can duck it and run away from it, or we can, mess around with it, or we can catch it. And so many people, many of us are maybe latching on. So one of the struggles is latching on to ideas that very strongly that we would earlier have never even thought about and maybe even been unaware of. And so we've had to sort through some of our beliefs and convictions, and that is not a bad thing. But where are you with that? How are you doing with that baseball? So we're having to learn it. We're having to learn to manage this new and big, interesting world. And so I say new. I'm not trying to talk down to anyone. New as in last decade or two or longer, whatever. So I think we would be in agreement that information has become much more accessible. And it's actually something that the Bible prophesies will happen in the last days. Knowledge will increase. It doesn't say wisdom will increase. It says knowledge will increase in the end days. And that is what is happening, right? So how much more it will increase yet, we don't know, but it definitely is increasing. And there are a lot of opinions out there, right? And a lot of facts. And we can pick and choose. I was talking with one of my friends once, and he agreed with me that, if I have a certain opinion about something, I can choose support. I can find support for almost any idea online, right? And if I want to believe in something and I want to find support for that, well, I'm sure I can find a video or an article or whatever, and that will support what I believe. So those are maybe true things, but we don't know. And so that is something where we can pick and choose. And I appreciated Delmer's talk that he had to us, I believe, this last winter about an echo chamber, right? So we can just go and we can just turn around in our own stew of information. And it's funny that our devices, they know what we're interested in. Well, it's not the device, it's the thing behind that, whatever that is. It knows what we're interested in. It studies us. And so it knows what we like, and so it will feed us the things that we like. And so we're spinning around in this world that we're creating for ourselves, and it feeds us the information that it knows that we're interested in, and it just snowballs until we're drowned in it. And so how are you doing with that ball? And maybe oversimplifying a bit, and so something that I'm dealing with in my life, that is, and it's probably in yours as well, and many of yours. How many, and so here's a question for us to think about. How many half-truths have you accepted and have become very dear to you? Here's another question that came to me as I was preparing this message. How much? Some of us have battled with or been in certain amounts of discouragement or frustration over the last year. And worry. How much of that would you have avoided if you had no access, if you lived somewhere in a village somewhere out in the middle of Bolivia, or let's pick another country, I don't know which country in Africa. That's convenient to pick that. It's so far away. How much of the worry and frustration would you not have had if you had been completely cut off from all that information? Probably a significant amount for some of us, and including for myself as well, some. So then the question is, whose battles are you fighting? Whose battle are you fighting? Because we're fighting battles of facts, let's call them facts, opinions, half-truths, some truth. Whose battle are you fighting? Whose ideas are you, who originated with that? Whose battle is it? The more soldiers an army has, the stronger it is, and whatever side we are on needs more soldiers. Just like Jesus, God wants people in his kingdom too to spread the gospel. How much energy are you using on other people's causes? How much energy are you expending on the causes of other people and organizations? It takes energy to be wrapped up in some of these things that we can be wrapped up in. And it could be causes, could be ideas, it could be just frivolous stuff like what everybody had to eat, right? Or what everybody's doing this afternoon. Or the scenery that people are enjoying, right? And so then we have to post it, and I do that, as you know. So how much of that is necessary? So whose cause are we fighting? What use are we making? How many of these things could you avoid and still live just as well as you do now? It wouldn't take away from your quality of life if you just ignored. How many of the issues that you're spending a lot of energy on, how many of the friends that you have, or whatever you want to call it, contacts, statuses, all these things. And they're not necessarily bad things, like I said, it's technology, but without how much of that could you live and still live a happy, blessed life? Maybe in some cases happier and more blessed. There's another question that I've had to ask myself, and I've had to confront in myself, and I'd like to present it to you to think about. How has your worldview changed since you gained access to information? How has your view of the world, of God, of other people changed since you got access to information? So there are many things we need to know, and I always think there's men among us, there's people that need to know. Maybe we all need to know. We cannot just bury our head in the sand. We do not live in a little village somewhere in the jungle. We live here, and we are affected by the things that happen. We're affected by each other. Some of us, many of us, probably all of us, have family far away that we like to be in contact with. So those are good things. But if I expend my energy, if I latch on to other people's agendas and other people's causes, if I worry, if I become emotionally drained, I become distraught. I'm starting to take very strong sides. I'm starting to promote the idea of other people being added to these things. I worry about the causes and opinions of other people that are being passed around. I mean, it drains me emotionally. Oh, here's another video passed to me. Here's another this. Oh, he has this, and it's just, and I'm getting emotionally drained. Do you? You're getting distraught. Maybe you haven't noticed it, what it's coming from. I'm starting to take sides. Starting to promote the idea of other people. So now, again, the question, whose battle am I fighting? If that's happening to me, if I'm getting distraught about all these things, then I'm not mature enough for the exposure. Just like you limit exposure of information to your children, to your family, you need to limit it to yourself. You need to control it for yourself as well. You need to catch that ball and make it behave that you need it to behave. Somebody said, and this is, I'm sorry that I forgot the pastor's name. It's from one of the English pastors of the previous century, I believe. I'm sorry that I forgot his name. I just put it in my notes later. But he said something to this effect, that Christians, we tend to, with all the information, and in their day it was newspapers, it was the media, take responsibility. In other words, they take ownership of things over which they have no influence. Is that happening to you? You're starting to worry about things over which you have no influence over. Right? Starting to be distraught. Your day is ruined and there's nothing you could possibly do about that. So we could be just hopeless and nihilistic or whatever and just say, well, we can't do anything anyway. So maybe you should spend some energy and some worry on it, but how much? To me, it seems like the online world we gain comes at the expense of the real world. So we pay with the real world for the online world. You and I have only a certain amount of time. We all have 24 hours a day, give or take. We all have 7 days a week. We all have the same amount of time. We have only a limited amount of time. We have a limited amount of energy, and that is different for each one of us. But we all have a certain amount of energy, whatever that is. We all have a certain amount of love to give. We have a certain amount of emotions that we can afford to have or express. We have a certain amount of care and compassion to have, or passion. So who or what are we spending that on? The time, the passion, the energy, the love, the care. Who is getting it? That's why I say sometimes for those of us who are wrapped up in that world, we're paying for it with the real world. Some couples are emotionally divorced because of this. They're living together, but they're emotionally divorced because of this. Some teenagers, some young people are far too young to leave the home, but they have already left emotionally and spiritually because of this. They're living in another world. Some parents have emotionally died to their children because of this. The children are basically orphans in their homes. I've heard stories like that because the parents are living in another world. They're paying for it with their real world. The real world is paying for the virtual world or the online world. And so what will be the result of these kind of things? And so may it not be true of us. Likely it is not. But we need to think about it, and that's our topic today. Where are you at on that? How are you treating the ball that is flying at you? Like we said before, at the beginning of time, God made the individual, made the family, the community, church, and the village, right? They deserve our first love. They should be our first priority. Real people will ask us real questions. Real people will see our face. They will not see the most beautiful picture of us that we choose to post, right? They will see how we actually look, what we actually are thinking. Real people will know our weakness to a certain extent, our strengths, our glories, and our sorrows. And if they are believers, they will still make room for us. So is it all bad? No. I've sometimes struggled. Longer ago, I wasn't the first one in my group of acquaintances to get a smartphone. And I sometimes wonder, okay, they're just looking at their phone, right? I remember thinking, I was in a restaurant once and I saw there was a couple eating at dinner at a table. And they were both, it looked like they're having a meal together. They were having it didn't look like it. They were having a meal together. And they were both on their phone, on their cell phone. And I was spiting them. I thought, man, what kind of... But I've since realized that on your phone, you have your family camp schedule. On your phone, you have your pitch pipe. On your phone, you have your bank. You have your post office. You have your store. Many stores, actually. You can have your yard sale there, your business, your work, your mom, your dad. How-to tips, like some of us didn't learn how to change hot water tank elements, so we can find how to do that online. Your calendar, your calculator, your music, your books, your newspaper, your weather forecast, your camera, your photo albums. I remember when I was little, we sometimes looked at photo albums, right? My mom had made they're big old photo albums with pictures in it, right? And of each trip, there were a couple of pictures that we took. Now we take 1,000 pictures of each trip, and those are in that thing. So what I'm trying to, okay, and then there's the church. The church is in your phone, right? Neighbors, your friends, the travel agency, maps, the Bible, your flashlight, the family gatherings from both sides, and then maybe yet just the aunts, and then just the uncles, and then just the cousins, and then yet that group of cousins, and then, I don't know, how many groups do you have on each side of your family that are all in that phone? The brotherhood meeting is in the phone, the school class, the ministerial meeting, the board meeting that you're serving on, and probably have a work meeting. And how many other things are all in your phone? So when next time you see somebody looking at their phone, don't condemn them. They're probably doing something very worthwhile and something very useful that you need them to do, right? It's a technology, like your chair that you're sitting on. Don't judge them too hard. They're likely doing something important and good. And I need to wrap up here. I'm seeing I'm pressed for time. So we carry. Here's a point for you to think about, and maybe you think about this. So we carry all the above, our bank, our calendar, our weather forecast, both family gatherings from all sides, calculators, a calendar, your work meetings, your post office, your pitch pipe, and your schedules, and whatever all things you carry with you everywhere you go, basically, many of you, like the adults, and those of you who are older and you have that. You have it along, all of that along at the breakfast table. Many of you have it in your bedroom. You have it when you go to the barn, when you travel, you drive to the city, to town. You go on vacation, you have it at the lunch table. You take it along to work. You take it along when visiting friends. You take it along to church. You have it right here. And so we're always connected to the whole world, and that is different than it was just a few years ago. So we're carrying that around all the time. Some time ago, I felt like I was being discouraged. I was being frustrated by some of this. And so I felt like just disconnecting that whole thing and cutting off my data and just saying, I'm done with the online world, with WhatsApp and all those things. I'm just disconnecting. I'm going to be a real person again. But then I realized what that would do, and I realized I probably couldn't afford to do that. So because we're carrying all this around, no wonder people are distressed, on edge. We're all the time. If you do this, if you carry this around all the time, you're always connected. You're always carrying this around. It's always at your fingertips. It's different than it used to be. It used to be when you wanted to check the mail, you had to decide if you wanted to pay for the gas and go to town and check your mail at the post office. It's not that way anymore. And so we're disconnected from those around us. It tends to disconnect us. How many times do you at the breakfast table check something? You shouldn't. The enemy's goal is to divide and conquer. That's a common strategy of war. It's also the devil's idea, and that's what we're facing with this and with other things as well, to divide us and then conquer us. See, if they can divide us and then feed us a lot of stuff, then we're eating off of their table, off of their plate. Divide and then conquer, and then they have. Psalm 1 says, it's a good passage that a brother shared with me recently regarding this exactly. And let me see if I find it here quickly. It says, and listen to this in regards to your online circle and the things that you watch or you do, and what I do and what I watch. It says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. So these things that you're absorbing, from whom do they come? Do they come from godly or from ungodly? Nor standeth in the way of sinners. Are they sinners or are they believers? Nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Some of the things that are out there, and some of it that I sometimes watch, it's made by scornful people. And here it says, the people who do not walk and do not sit in the seat of the scornful and the ungodly and the sinners are blessed. So are you blessed? It says, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. Okay, so there's part of the call. So we could move away, we could dodge it, or we could just not know what to do with it, or we can catch it and make it a tool for us. So this should be a tool, not a toy. Very important concept to think about it when you deal with this, with the online world. It should be a tool, not a toy. So maybe you should make a habit for a week or two or a month. Every time before you picked up your phone, you should say aloud what you want to do. What's your purpose? What are you going to do now? Say it aloud. Oh, I want to check the weather, and then do only that. Oh, I need to check my bank balance. Say it, okay? It's okay if you're in your vehicle or if you're walking down the street and you need to check when it's going to rain. You could look up, but if you want to check it on your phone, then say, now I want to check my weather, right? I didn't read that anywhere. It's just something that I thought of maybe would be a good idea for me. And I think it would be good for you too. It would help us to think about that and do only that thing. And 2 seconds later, feel your phone buzz. Oh, I want to see what my boss says, right? He sent me a message. Or I want to something, right? So we must learn to deal with this. We must learn to manage it. One thing that we need to do is we need to have areas in our house where the whole world cannot follow you. It does not belong in those areas of the house. There are only certain areas where the whole world is allowed to follow you. There need to be times in your day where the world cannot follow you, that is shut off. It cannot follow you, cannot speak to you. You need to have times with God where you are shut off from that. You need to have evenings, times with your family where that is not part of the time. You need to have time with your church, with your fellowship, disconnected from that, where you know you're cut off from that, focusing on those who actually love you and in spite of who you are. So maybe you should take a day, maybe you should take a week, maybe you should take a month to detox. Some of you are into health, and so we should maybe take a detox from some of this. I tried it for one day on Saturday a couple of weeks ago, and I really enjoyed that day. I'd put my thing and I'd put it out somewhere, and I think I even switched it off. And I put it there and said, today I'm not going to think about, I'm not going to, like good things. I don't have unpleasant things on my phone. There's good things, but I just want to be free today. I don't want to carry the world with me today. I want to be with my family and do whatever. It was a beautiful, pleasant day, it felt. But then later in the afternoon sometime, I felt I just had to do something. So there I was, and there came all the messages that I had missed and I should have responded to. All right, but then for the rest of the day, I put it, and so it was good. So maybe you should try that just to see what real life is like. And so some of these things are part of real life. I don't want to put it too negatively, but I want to say it clearly enough so that you will be moved to catch the ball if that's what you have not been doing. At the end of your life, what will really have been important? Will you still care about the things you now so energetically follow, that I now so energetically promote? Will it still matter then, that I spend so much time on now? Here's a thought for you. Prioritize those who are near you over those who are far away. Use your technology to build God's kingdom, to build good relationships with people that you need to have good relationships with, but not at the expense of God's kingdom, not at the expense of your family, not at the expense of those who should be your first priority. In other words, don't pay for the online world with the real world. Be a provider, not just a consumer. Purpose to add face-to-face value with God and with those whom He has given you. Here's a test for you. Philippians 4 verse 8 says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on those things. So that's a good test for you to pass on when you do that, when I do that. Another good test, if you have children, if you have a family, if you are married, if you have parents, if you have siblings, ask them, how am I doing with this? Who does it seem to you is more important, the online world or the real world? Focus on the things that you know. Pass on things that you know. feed on things that are true and that are good. Psalm 19 verse 14 says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." We're called to provide for our families, and let's do that. The online world has a lot of evil on it. I've chosen not to address that here, but it reveals, the way we spend our time reveals about ourselves. It's not that that is just a bad thing, it just gives opportunity. It reveals, I guess, some to ourselves who we are. So go to the place where there's good food for your soul. It reveals, our online tracks reveal our appetite. What are you eating? That will permeate your being, and you will pass it on to the people, to the real world. Those who hunger and thirst after righteousness will be filled. And so let that be our prayer, to find the things that we do, the things that we think acceptable to God. And let's prioritize, really. Let's not have the intention. We often judge ourselves by our intentions, but people around us judge us by our actions. That includes your children. Yeah, you have the intention. You want to spend time with your children. Every parent has that, almost every parent has that intention. But your children know whether you actually do or not. They may not be aware of your intention. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for your word that speaks to us so clearly about our heart. And our prayer this evening is that going forward, where that has not been the case, that our thoughts and our words and our expressions and our diet would become acceptable to you. And where it is, we praise you for it. Thank you for all the things and all the opportunities that are there, that where we can spread the gospel in ways that were never possible before. Thank you for that, and the wisdom and the smartness that you have given people to invent. But God, help us to catch that ball and make it do what it is supposed to do. In the name of Jesus, amen.